We're going to be using markers tonight. Okay, the first rule of marker drawing, wow. You can't really see this because of the way the recording's set up, but there's a piece of tracing paper, you can kind of see it. Put tracing paper on your board before you start using markers. Why doesn't everybody get down and put a piece of tracing paper about yay long? Please put it, you got it? Please put it on your desk and tape it down. These markers will bleed through, titanium, and once they hit that desk, it stains. So everybody put paper down first, and let's do that now. All right, so what I did was I went through and I said, I'm going to find a way. All right, I just scanned in the black and white drawing that we did in class. We did it as an assignment at one point, I believe, and I colored it totally in GIMP. I didn't finish that one. That represents, at least a couple hours of working in GIMP. And it's okay, but I could spend another couple hours on it. I then said, all right, this is hard and takes too much time. What I'm going to do is I scanned a line drawing. This is a different site plan, but it's similar. I scanned a line drawing, and then I scanned a sheet of green marker on paper. So I just brought this into a scanner, and I brought it into GIMP, and I use that as a background. I kind of like it a little bit. Again, a couple of hours, and I could spend another hour or so on it. It's taken too much time. I then did this. And this one was interesting because what this one was, this is painted. All right, so what I used was I took acrylic paint, just regular acrylic paint, and I thinned the living daylights out of it in rubbing alcohol, and then I just painted on bond paper with it. I tried at first I used some inks. I don't know if I don't have the ink one here. My daughter had some just different inks like India ink, and I used those. Some of it worked okay. She didn't have that much ink or that many varieties of colors. I tried watercolor on this. Can't do it. It'll bleed the lines, the black lines. The water will dissolve those lines, which might be a problem with your markers, Roberts, because yours are water-based. We'll find out soon enough. But the alcohol won't. So I took, like I said, latex paint, just latex artist paint, put it in a jar, mixed it with alcohol, stirred it up, got a watercolor brush, and did this. I very much like the way it came out with a couple problems. The green, the apple green is a little too vivid. I would use a different shade of green in the future. But the rest of it, it's starting to get a markery, watercolory feel, so I like that part of it, but it took a couple hours. And I still wound up going over it with a marker to put the property line in. So then I did this afternoon. That's all markers. That took me an hour, including eating lunch while I did it. So I had a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. I took a break of about 10 minutes in the middle of this and did that in less than an hour. And I think that came out pretty well. I did on all of these, that is a scanned line work. Let's see. This one was interesting because when I first did this, I had the Photoshop I had the colored background set to a lower opacity, and I kind of like the grass green in that one, but the trees don't stand out enough. And that's medium opacity. This is pretty much what the drawing looked like, which is right. Okay, there's the painted one. This is the marker one. So this was a couple hours. This was 45 minutes to an hour. And this one might have been ink washes that I was messing with. I think that one was ink washes. Like the green, like some of it. I hit this one with markers afterwards too. So maybe at some point I'll find a nice system other than using markers, but for now, the markers certainly are a lot quicker and they give me a predictable result. What I do with these drawings, you're going to see when we do our exercise tonight. Give me a second. Import markers test. Let's try that one. If it ever wants to open up. Okay. All right. So let's see. No, I don't want. Well, yeah, this will show it. View extras. Okay. No, I really didn't want to show that one. Let me see if I got the other one. PSD. Import markers. Demo PST. Maybe it's this one. Nope. And nope. All right. Well, I can show it on this one. So what I've done is, okay, there's the original drawing. And what I did is I then brought in and scanned in the black. I just pulled the black and white ink work off and put that in. And I want you to notice the difference, because you're going to have to go through and redo all the black ink work on your drawings. Now, there is a way to do that in GIMP or Photoshop where you can just scan it and spare yourself having to redraw the whole thing. But the difference between not having the lines and having the lines is pretty significant. You kind of need it. So I wanted to show you that. Yeah, what happened with the other one, you can play these games with, no, that's wrong. Once, if you want to do it in the color, get it in GIMP, which I highly recommend you start figuring out how to do, you can adjust it sometimes and see you can, all of a sudden, if it's too vivid, you can dull it. You can change colors to a limited degree. There's stuff you can do, but again, the fussier you want to get with it, the more time it takes. But I wanted to show you those. Don't save. Okay, and again, out of all of them, the one that took me the least amount of time, this one was starting to go somewhere, but I don't really like the trees as much as these trees. And this was hand, and I just banged it right out, again, while eating sandwich. And that's what you'll be doing tonight. I'd like to get these trees on that grass, and I could probably do it with the right color markers. Let's get into what we want to do. Color techniques. You can render in pencil. The Prismacolor pencils, and maybe some other colored pencils out there, decent colored pencils, will usually allow you to do a decent wash. And by a wash, I mean just a, okay, so let's, All right, let's look at that, but now I want to look at this. Okay, I can fade it out if I'd like to. So you can get a lot of really nice character in there. That's great. But remember how long it took me to just do that one square. And then so if I want to do a graded wash, the size of a postage stamp, it took me X amount of time. Which one's quicker? It takes a long time to do a pencil rendering and make it look decent. If you do it, kind of like this, it just doesn't look nice. One nice thing about the Prismacolors, which is where these shine over over cheap colored pencils, is the ability to, other than the fact that you can feather it like before, like that, but you can lay down a thick color, and if you go at it like in 7 different directions, that's pretty darn close to the color. It looks black on the screen. It's a dark green. But you can lay down a hard, dark wash with the Prismacolors, which is not many other pencils will let you do that. Cheap sets of colored pencils, much like I've tried rendering in crayons just to see what would happen. You get this buildup that gets shiny in spots. You just can't get it even. But with the Prismacolors, with a little bit of a gentle touch and the ability to, you can really do some wonderful things with Prismacolors. But I don't do it because it just takes too long. There's a gentleman, if you go online, I think it's Stephen Oles, O-L-E-S. And he's done some Prismacolor renderings which are, they're like photographic quality. And if you goof around in YouTube, Prismacolor drawings on YouTube, you'll see there are people that can do some pretty stunning stuff with Prismacolor pencils. It ain't quick. And I don't mean for these to be 5-hour and 6-hour assignments or 10-hour assignments. So we talked about Prismacolors. Let's talk about markers. Back when I was young, we used to do marker renderings. What we would do is this. I'm going to use a different marker just because these light greens are more valuable than diamonds. Okay, we would go through, and we would go to fill areas. You can see it sort of up there. What happens is whenever I'll try with a whiter marker, even though I hate to use up my white ones. What's this one? What happens is every time you overlap, it layers. So where you cross, can you kind of see where each stripe is? Because it's a little darker where I touch the lines. Now, in theory, I suppose if I could do it just absolutely, I already screwed it up. If I never had the lines touching, you'd never get that. But now I've got white spaces in the lines. If you want to do large flat washes, like that, just one tone, I don't recommend it for a couple reasons. It doesn't read that well. And second, when you're doing it, if you're doing it and you're tired, and, oh, look at that, I wasn't holding the marker. Whoop, oops. All right. Oh dear, I lost it. Okay, so anytime there's a mistake, like you have a white gap in there because you just wiggled your hand, you can't fix it. Because if I go to fix it, by covering it, all of a sudden I got a dark spot around what used to be a white spot, and it stands out like a sore thumb. So that's why I don't tend to use the flat washes. If it's something you want to try, until you get used to drawing straight lines freehand, and remember, we used to do this on drawings that were 24 by 36, so they were bigger than my board, and you'd have to go across the whole sheet on the site plan. What you'd want to do, and we used to do this on occasion, was just lightly put in some help lines, so you would keep your lines going at least roughly on the same path, especially for long straight poles. They disappear, but you can see when you're starting to lose it on a big area. Again, I don't have much use for that. You can do I'm going to get into the broken line wash. A straight line built up wash. Here, these are all straight line washes. What you can do with this is you can use it like watercolors and you layer it. Meaning, I can put another layer on top of the grain. Okay, I let that dry, and when it dries, you'll see that there's always it gets a little darker where I use 2 layers. So that's handy. That kind of means that your one marker is worth 2. It's the light color, and if you double it up, it's a darker version of the same. You can do that for multiple layers. But my experience has been that really you can kind of see there's 2, there's 3. When I start getting it into 4, there's a little difference there, but once you go 3 or 4, maybe it'll show up a little better here. And by the time I get to 5, it's pretty much the same as 4, which isn't that much different than 3. So you can see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and then anything beyond that, it's just going to be as bold as the marker's going to go. So you can get a good 3 layers out of it, which again will be handy. The wash that I tend to use when I tend to do my areas, and you probably saw this in the drawing, I recommend that you guys think about this wash. I use a broken line wash, and all it is I kind of go that's it. All right, now it's because it's got those starts and stops in it. If I mess up a little, it's easy to correct, and it doesn't look like a mistake. So, for example, if I get a bigger area, try not to do your line. Oops, oh no, I made a mistake. Not a problem. Really doesn't stand out that much anyways, because there's a lot of little breaks and gaps in it. Very rarely will I just put down one layer of wash. I always like to have some type of gradation in my wash. What do I mean by that? Here on the flat ones, that would mean aim for the corners, or put a little bit of, and once that dries, you'll see as it dries it gets a little less vivid. So, for example, trying to do this down here, by the time you get to 3 or 4, you're going to lose some of that character. I don't tend to go, I usually go 2, sometimes 3. But you can see that's a nice graded look. It's a little woogly. That's a technical term. It's a little woogly, but I like that. It just does, it's not a hard, crisp edge, which with a straight line wash you tend to get, because wherever you start, it leaves a little blob. Well, here, every time I started and stopped, it left a blob, but it's kind of, it's not a bug, it's a feature. And it makes for a nice feeling, especially on big areas. So that's the one I use. I talk about, puddling and stippling. And little vertical hairy lines and horizontal stripes over a flat wash after a little bit. Yeah, we're not going to go there. But let's talk about puddling and stippling. Stippling is really handy. Puddling works better on tracing paper. As you can see, it cut through the drawing. That's on my tracing paper. There's the back side of the sheet. Think about that when you do it in your sketchbook. Put a piece of tracing paper between the sheets if you're coloring marker in your sketchbook, or you will color 2 or 3 pieces of paper. Puddling on tracing paper, which we're going to do tonight, but you won't do much of it after tonight. Puddling is just a matter of really just kind of how well it's showing up there, but you can kind of see where they're like little dots, and if you get enough of them on there, it'll start to make a puddle. You can also, especially on tracing paper, you can do that with a dark color over it. And then you can go back over it with your white marker and kind of blend it all in. Now it works one way on tracing paper. It doesn't work the same on bond. So, but you can stipple. So for example, if I wanted to highlight these corners, I could do it. I didn't mean to use the heavy green. And then I can go over it with this, the light green again, and now all of a sudden and it kind of, by going over it with a second coat of that green, it starts to blend a little bit. A little is the key. If you hit it super fast, meaning have both your light and your dark marker open simultaneously, sometimes you can get it to actually go from a dark to a light color without seeing a whole lot of marker spots. It takes a lot of marker juice, but you can do it. I do it rarely. I'll do it with water and sky. Nope. Some of your markers have bullet points or paint brushes. For stippling, those are a lot of fun. And you can do a nice job of stippling with them. I find that I use the little bullet point, and I find I use it more now that I'm doing these 8.5 by 11s, on smaller drawings. But, that's kind of fun. I didn't want to do a whole drawing like that. I would actually love to do a whole drawing like that, but you're not going to want to do it for home. I will tend to use the fat end. If you just use the very point of the fat end, you can get a fairly decent stipple. The key to stippling, doing anything like that, is you're trying to make dots, not stripes. Okay, see the difference? If you jiggle the pen and make a stripe, it kind of ruins the effect of stippling. You really want to go straight down, make a dot. So really, think of pulling your hand off the page as soon as it touches it without moving your hand. So you can do it. I'm doing this one with the fat tip. All right, so again, my go-to is the broken line wash. This guy, I did the stippling in the corner, that I can do that. I do that too a lot, but that's my starting out of the gate. And I do, in the case of your site plans, you're going to do all the trees and all the grass with this. So the bulk of your sheet's going to be green with your light green, and I'll do the first pass, I'll do it that. And I usually, you'll see, I'll do a second pass over the trees, sometimes a third pass over the trees. I'll put some highlights to get some gradation in the corners to start getting that effect. It goes relatively quickly until you're not. So, having said all of that, quick pointers. All right, work fast and be loose. If your marker is squeaking, you are probably going too slow or your marker is running out of ink. So it's the surefire way to kill a marker. It makes a really nice dark green, but I am sucking the life out of that marker with every drag that I'm doing. It will pull it out of there, especially on bond, which is what we're going to do most of our coloring on for this class. So you want to work kind of fast. That's the nature. The reason we like the markers is because they've got that watercolory ink wash feel to them. And so that's the goal. Go fast. On print paper and bond paper, subtle marker colors make a vivid impression. On tracing paper, bold colors are required to be visible. We will be doing a rendering. Our first colored rendering will be actually on tracing paper. All right, so you'll see what I mean when I say this. If you use your light green marker on it, you can barely see it. And then you go and use your light green marker on bond, and it's like electric. So it's a huge difference. In the beginning, people like using, they prefer the tracing paper because it's kind of more forgiving, and it really gets a nice watercolor feel to it. You'll get over that, and you're going to want the vivid colors of the bond. I've never done, I shouldn't say never, but I've done color. You see some up on that wall up there where we colored tracing paper. It's fine, but I never did that for a client. I always colored bond. And we'll be doing both tonight. Be careful mixing different brand markers and using markers over ink work. Markers over ink work. So let's say you want to do a tree. In plan. Here's one of our cheap trees in plan. And I'm like, okay, I want to color it. I'm going to go right to my dark one because I don't want to trash out my good one. Whoops. Goodbye tree line work. Okay, that's not going to work. So you can't ink your drawing on, especially tracing paper, but even on bond, you can't do an ink drawing and then just color it with the markers. What you can do, and what I do, is I do an ink black and white drawing, I scan it, and then I print it on an inkjet printer. And I can color over that till the cows come home with an alcohol-based marker. You probably won't be using anything but alcohol-based markers, although, like I said, Robert, we'll see how your water-based ones work. So if you get solvent-based markers, they'll tear up inkjet block. So they'll bleed, they'll smudge all your inkjet stuff if you print it on an inkjet printer. They won't smudge laser printed stuff. And it's the same the opposite way. If you print on an inkjet and alcohol marker, you can color over it till the cows come home and the line work looks fine. If you try to do that on a laser printed one, it makes a mess. However, if you do a color laser printed one, you can usually use the alcohol markers. I don't have a color laser printer. Kinko's does. Some people have done that and had good luck with it. So just beware of it. Note that you'll find out what your markers smear and what they don't. But as a rule of thumb, an inkjet printer, which is what most of you are going to have at home, and what do you have? Do you have a printer?
It's just black and white.
It might be an inkjet still. Does it take cartridges? That's a laser printer. Save those markers. You might want those. It's because those might color it better if you get to a point where you're scanning it and coloring it. Or a solvent-based marker, which you're just gonna have a hard time finding. They have them on eBay and Amazon, but it's $15 a marker, and they're probably 12 years old. So just beware of it. You'll find out right away if you printed something out and you smudge it with your marker, you just print it out again and use a different marker, or come up with a different technique. So, steps I use when applying color: lay down flat washes, add texture to flat wash with marker, add lightweight ink work, profile, add sky in the elevation, add art stick texture, provide heavy base elevation. As a rule of thumb, I do the big areas first. I then build the washes up on top of them. Why don't we all take a stab at that? So, we're going to start with, hopefully, prints for you. And you can follow on, take that down on your tracing paper. Don't color it with markers yet. There we go. There we go. All right, you want to color along?
I'm good for
You're
today.
good for that? All right.
Thank you.
There we go. And I'm also, while you're taking this down, do not color it, because you're going to be putting a piece of trace over it. Put it on top of your trace, tape it, and then lay a piece of trace over it. I said in my email that I couldn't recommend any other marker brands other than Prismacolors and Copics. Because I got so upset with how hard these things are getting, and I said I couldn't recommend Ohuhu's. There's Ohuhu's. This was $24 on Amazon. And it's got all those colors. One would say, well, you SOB, why did you make me go out and spend $50 to $100 on Copics when I could have bought 48 colors for $24? Here's the good news. These work, as near as I can tell. I've only done, the drawing that I showed you, the one that I showed you, I did in markers this afternoon while I ate my lunch. I did that with these. They got through one drawing without drying up. I don't know if they'll get through two. Here's the problem. They don't sell individual colors. This one, this set I bought for 20-something dollars with 48 colors, has one light green, pale green. Okay, that's it. When it's done, which this will die sooner than any of my other markers, my only choice is to buy another $24 set so I can have the light green marker. They don't sell them individually. The refills?
Yeah, I just found out that they have Coptic refills and
Yep. They do have Coptic refills, and Coptic you can refill any color. So that might be the ticket for you. And because my pea green died this afternoon, I might be looking into a Coptic refill. And they're cheaper. It's like $4 or $5, I think, versus $8 for the. Although at Michael's you were getting the markers for $3.50 anyways, if it was on sale. But yes, they have a refill option. Ohuhu has, is it Ohuhu? I don't know. They have refills supposedly. They don't have their full color range. I don't know what the refills are. I don't know how long they last. But like I said, based on the fact that I've only got one marker for grass in here, and when that goes, my only option is buying another set that has that color in it. So I'm going to wind up with, if I use this for the rest of my life, at the end of my life, I will have 7,000, oranges and purples that I have never used. So that's a little bit wasteful. One nice thing about this is they give you this cool plastic sheet, that you can lay down in your sketchbook to separate pages. That's kind of fun. My daughter pointed that out to me. She says, oh, you get a sheet with that. And it works, as you can see by the smudges all over it. So today, the Ohuhus seem to work as well as the Copics, or pretty close to it. They work better than the Master's Touch ones from Hobby Lobby. The feel of them's better. I can't say anything about their longevity. And again, since you can't buy the individual markers, it's going to be somewhat problematic. I'll see if they have refills for the colors that I like to use.